I don't know that fool.
It's Eddie Murphy.
Yes. Fabulous.
And Eddie Murphy, as you've never seen him before. Bless you. And this man is the genius behind effects like that. Rick Baker is one of the world's top makeup specialists. He did An American Werewolf in London and hundreds of other films. Rick's won 3 Oscars and has created some of the most remarkable effects ever seen. But the Nutty Professor was his scariest challenge yet.
The work that I did in Nutty Professor is kind of the hardest kind of thing that you can do. I've done all kinds of things. I've done aliens and gorillas. People don't see, you know, fantasy characters every day. But overweight people you see every day. And the audience is a lot less forgiving on that kind of stuff.
Penis! Don't you dare say something like that about Mom.
So how did Rick turn Eddie Murphy into Heavy Murphy? Well, the first thing he did was get him plastered.
It's not just his face, but his entire body that we cast.
From that, they made a rubber suit.
This is what Eddie wore under his costume to make him appear to be 450 pounds. And it's basically very lightweight urethane foam that we hand-carved into these shapes. And then it's covered with a lycra spandex skin like this, so that it would slip and slide under his costume.
Parts of the suit were filled with cellulose and water to make sure he wobbled in all the right places. That's fine when he's fully clothed. But what about when he's stark naked?
This flesh was made from silicone to make sure the flabs sagged. The body was modelled on a local 19-year-old. It was then moulded into a shell, and all Eddie had to do was slip inside. The handiwork is incredible. Every part fits like a glove. You know, you've really got to hand it to Rick. But his biggest challenge was not creating fat bodies, but the faces to go with them.
This plasticine is like modeling clay like kids play with, is, you know, gradually built up onto the face until we get something that resembles a Sherman makeup. Or in the case of this here is a representation of what the mother looked like in plasticine. So all these features are all sculpted in plasticine. The pores are all put in there. The hair obviously isn't plasticine in the end, but this helps us look at it as a design.
Fabulous!
A negative mold is made of that. The plasticine is cleared away, and the void space that was once taken up by clay, then we inject foam rubber into that, bake it in an oven, and we pull out this piece we call an appliance.
Once the lower half of the face is complete, it was time for a spot of beauty therapy and a makeup session.
In a not very glamorous way, the first thing we actually did was put a plastic bag on his head, which helps us slide this piece over and try not to rip it. Then we attach it to his face with the medical glue. So we go through the process of peeling the piece down, painting the glue on his face, putting it back, continuing working up to the edge, which had a very tissue-thin little blending piece. If that edge flips over and sticks on itself or folds over, the whole makeup is wasted. You can't disguise that. So you really want this seamless. You don't want to know where the piece stops. Sherman had a wig, so we put the wig on. When it comes to the painting part, which is the part I really like, because then you're tying the whole thing together, and all of a sudden it goes from a piece of rubber stuck onto his face to one whole cohesive look. It's not, you know, one color. It's not like you have flesh. Many colors are put in there to achieve the real translucency.
The torture lasted for 3 hours every day for 70 days. In the film, Eddie has a unique weight problem that would baffle any Weight Watcher. His weight goes up and down, and in and out, just like that. So how did they do it?
We did these latex bladders that were glued onto Eddie's face, and then a very thin foam rubber piece was put on top of that, and then we could inflate the air into this bladder, and we go back down like that.
It was all too much for some. Then Rick did the Hollywood thing. He gave Eddie an implant.
This again was made out of silicone. We made it all on a denture that we could just clip into his teeth. So when it was time to put this on, it was just like open up Eddie, we'd shove this in his mouth, clips down on his teeth, and he had this big, ridiculous lip.
Using a technique known as morphine, Rick even made the body parts move. How? Well, take this sequence. Eddie provided the first shot, his face. Rick created the final shot, the chin. And a computer filled in the gaps in between. And that's how they did this bit too.
People look at the work that I do and say, how do they do that? You know, it's really, I really feel like I've gotten somewhere if I've done that. If people go, how do they do that? You know, how do they make that man turn into a wolf? How do they make that guy 450 pounds? You know, I find that thrilling. You know, that's what I strive for.
Professor? Hello, Jason.
And as for Eddie, well, he got somewhat hot under the collar and it got under his skin a bit. But
Now that is very nasty.
he had a flabulous time.